Increasingly wet and windy through the morning, with rain moving in from the southwest, which will be heavy at times, remaining fairly mild though. Heading to the northeast of England, it's going to be dry there, but a cool start to the day, though rain will build in later and temperatures will rise as mild air pushes in from the southwest. Across Scotland, a cold start to the day with a frost and patches of fog at first. Cloudy, wet and windy conditions moving in across the south though through the morning. Wet and cloudy across Northern Ireland tomorrow morning with heavy outbreaks of rain, windy but particularly along northern coasts where even gales are possible, becoming increasingly mild though. And that's how the weather's shaping up during tomorrow morning.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else, I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Hello and welcome to GB News Live. Coming up, the chairman of the Education Select Committee calls out the Prime Minister as the nation's schools prepare to reopen in the new year. And find out why travel experts are warning of severe disruption over the next few days. But first, let's bring you right up to date with all of the news. Here's Holly Middlehurst.
Alistair, thank you. Good evening. This is your news at 8 o'clock. People should enjoy themselves at New Year, but exercise caution when celebrating. That's according to a senior government minister today. Gillian Keegan says people should go out and have fun to see in 2022, but should also take steps to limit their chances of catching the virus. New Year's Eve parties were given the green light in England yesterday after the government confirmed there'll be no new COVID restrictions before 2022. Scotland's First Minister, though, is warning COVID cases will continue to rise as the country experienced a record number of infections over the Christmas period. Nicola Sturgeon's urging people to get a booster jab if they haven't already and stick to social distancing measures. For the fourth consecutive day, over 8,000 positive cases has been recorded in Scotland. That's a peak of over 11,000 infections being recorded on one day. Meanwhile, business leaders want more support for the hospitality sector after the Omicron variant led to a sharp drop-off in trade in the run-up to Christmas. British Chambers of Commerce President Baroness McGregor Smith wants business rates relief and the emergency rate of VAT extended beyond the end of March. She's also calling for a focused furlough support scheme. Nightclub owner Alex Proud told GB News he welcomes the decision.
us, the most important thing is to confirm that we're staying open and there isn't going to be a lockdown in January. New Year's Eve, don't forget, we need people to book because obviously people didn't book in December with all the concerns. So we're still nervous, but we're very, very relieved right now.
And away from COVID, the Home Secretary Priti Patel has ordered a review of the current rules surrounding crossbow ownership. A 19-year-old man was arrested at Windsor Castle on Christmas Day while allegedly in possession of the weapon. He's since been sectioned under the Mental Health Act. It's currently an offence for anyone under the age of 18 to purchase or even possess a crossbow. 2 staff from the charity Save the Children are among at least 35 people who were killed in Myanmar on Christmas Eve. Government soldiers rounded up a group of people in a village before fatally shooting them. The charity says the 2 workers were travelling back to a nearby office when they got caught up in the attack, and they've called on the UN Security Council to respond. In the United States, the judge in the trial of Ghislaine Maxwell is urging the jury to work slightly longer hours as COVID cases rise in New York. She says an astronomical spike caused by Omicron means there's an increasing risk that jurors and participants may need to quarantine. The British socialite is on trial, accused of luring young girls to be abused by Jeffrey Epstein. She denies all the charges. That's your news update. I'm back in an hour.
Thanks, Polly. There's growing concern about the imminent return to school for children across the United Kingdom, with many teachers expected to miss the start of term because of COVID. Now, a senior Conservative Member of Parliament has called for Boris Johnson to give children's education the same priority as the National Health Service. Robert Halfon, who's the chairman of the Education Select Committee, told me that the government and local authorities should consider merging schools and even having joint classrooms.
Well, the first thing I'd say is I argued since the beginning of lockdown that just as the government created a National Army of Volunteers for the Health Service, they should have established a National Army for the Education Service. We're told that we should protect the NHS. Absolutely, I agree with that, but we should protect our children's futures too. And I'm glad that the Secretary of State has announced a campaign to get former teachers back into school as volunteers. And we could use retired Ofsted inspector, former university lecturers, other educationists as well. But I'd like a second thing to happen. Clearly, in some schools, and it's not in every school, there have been issues because of COVID, teachers being, not enough staff being in the school. So what the government should do is set up task forces with the local authorities, all the leading academies, and support them with supply teachers to try and make sure that the children are kept in school. Work with those task forces to perhaps merge schools where schools are near each other or have joint classrooms where possible. And I accept that this may not happen everywhere, but just because it can't happen everywhere doesn't mean it shouldn't happen anywhere. The priority of the government should set out a plan of action, how to keep our children in school, to make sure that we keep them learning and that they can get the catch-up that they need.
Robert Halfon, the chairman of the Education Select Committee. The government confirmed last night that there will be no further COVID restrictions in England before 2022, giving mass events the go-ahead and leaving nightclubs open for New Year's Eve, in contrast, of course, with the other UK nations. But what do the Labour Party make of the decision? We spoke to Siobhan McDonough, Labour MP for Mitcham and Morden, a little earlier.
This is saying is that, we're as delighted as anybody that people's plans, their new year is not going to be ruined by further restrictions. It's just that with this, you always have to have an eye on the data. You always have to look for the future. And over the last couple of years, we've seen decisions that are made too late and result in worse outcomes. So we're just being cautious because as yet, we've not had that same data shared with us as the government will have had the opportunity to see. There are some figures that we know. What we're particularly looking at is if the number of admissions to hospitals in London in particular reach 400, then something would have to happen. Now, clearly, that hasn't hit that number. So it looks like the system with cope. Because with all of this, you're always looking to what will happen in the next week, the next 10 days, what will happen to admissions in hospital. Because, certainly in London, we are in a difficult place because 1 in 20 of us have got the virus, and that has a huge impact on the staff in our hospitals and our care sector. And also, I am sure that we all desperately want the schools to open next week. So it's really important that there's a plan to do that.
The thoughts there of Labour MP Siobhan McDonough. But what do the public think? Our Yorkshire and Humberside reporter Anna Riley spoke to people in Hull to get their views.
Let people enjoy it this year and then bring it in. But it's going to affect a lot of businesses, obviously. A lot of people have already gone out of business where we used to go. So now we're having to shop elsewhere. So unfortunately, that's going to affect people anyway, as we've seen over the last year. So yeah, I think it would be a good idea to bring it in because it's getting a little bit out of hand now again.
Just get on with it and carry on how we are. Yeah, carry on how we are and we just live with it. Like, it's not fair, is it? Like, we're going to be stuck with it for a long time and we haven't got a cure for it, so yeah.
I just think he needs to decide what he's going to do and stop leaving us in the lurch right now. No one knows what we're doing, do we? And that's it.
I think the COVID situation and all what's been done for us has been absolutely fabulous with our injections, our booster. But I still do believe that we still should be very, very careful. I still think that people should still take care because we don't really know when this is going to finish. Or, we've got to still look after each other and everybody else around us and just make sure that, fingers crossed, that it will get better. But for now, I'm still keeping my mask on because it's hiding my wrinkles as well.
I think it's disgusting. I think you should get another lockdown now. Definitely. Because it's not now get changing.
They're not too bad. I think he's doing all right at the minute.
Still with the coronavirus, in the United States, health officials have halved the recommended isolation time for people with asymptomatic COVID-19 from 10 to 5 days. Dr. Lawrence Gerlis, who is the CEO of Same Day Doctor, would like to see the UK follow suit.
They were right to reduce the isolation period from 10 days to 7 days. I'd like to go a bit further and do what the Americans have done and reduce it to 5 days with negative lateral flow, because that's the real problem in the NHS is staff shortages. But let me remind you, there are always staff shortages at this time of year. Doctors and nurses plan their holidays to take time off at Christmas, and they deserve it. It's run by a skeleton staff anyway every year. And if you look back at newspaper headlines for the last 15 or 20 years, there's always a midwinter crisis. There are always respiratory viruses in the UK. We have that sort of climate that encourages that. So I don't believe this is any different from where we would be if we had a mild flu epidemic.
And travel experts are warning of severe disruption over the new year. Airline passengers have been hit by the grounding of thousands of flights due to staff shortages caused by COVID. Around 8,000 flights were cancelled globally between Christmas Eve and Boxing Day. Our London reporter Alice Porter has more.
If we look in the UK at the moment, we've had the travel sector was actually starting to pick up towards the end of this year, and then Omicron hit, and then the government brought in some more regulations and restrictions in terms of testing, understandably to stop the spread of Omicron. But the unfortunate reality is that has a negative impact in terms of passengers. It's seen as less attractive to fly and go away, and that has a knock-on effect for airlines. And of course, the sector has been so badly damaged, and there's a real concern that if these restrictions that are in place currently, if they continue, then it could make the sector have more of a downturn, which is really, really worrying. But then let's just say you are able to book a flight and you're happy to take the risk and do your testing. Question is, well, where do you go at the moment? So of course, France, Germany, they've pretty clear that they're not having travellers from the UK. Austria say you have to have had your booster. So that takes up a whole of that kind of that winter market of people who might go skiing. happening. And then, of course, if you see all the travel disruption that's happening at the moment, for those people who might think of a quick sort of winter getaway for a few days, you find that quite off-putting. And the concern is that over the next month or two, is that other countries that are kind of catching up with Omicron may impose more restrictions. That's what Paul Charles, the travel expert, was saying to me when I spoke to him earlier.
I think there's a danger that other governments around the world put in place tougher measures because they're at an earlier stage in the cycle of Omicron than the UK is. The UK seems at the moment to be getting through this by putting in place perhaps cautious guidance and advice rather than tougher restrictions in the UK itself. And that means that the spike is happening faster than might be in other countries. So the concern is that other countries put in place measures to stop UK citizens travelling. And that would be my concern, that January itself sees a wide range of restrictions in place, which put off people from travelling further. There's no doubt 2022 is going to be a strong year in terms of bookings and confidence once we get through this wave of Omicron. The problem is it's getting through the next month or so, and no cash coming in for much of the travel sector. That's going to hurt those smaller businesses that will find it difficult to survive.
Children whose parents smoke are 4 times as likely to take up smoking themselves. That's the result of research from the Better Health Smoke Free campaign, who are highlighting the impact that adult smokers have on the young people in their lives. Dr. Bettina Hognern, who's a clinical psychologist at University College London, told GB News it's difficult for people to give up if they take up the habit in their teenage years.
We know that the primary motivators for people to want to give up smoking are to do with health, to do with money, but also to do with family. And so this research is really important. It's based on a social learning theory, which is one of the oldest theories in psychology, which says that children learn by observing and by imitating the most relevant models in their lives, and parents are those models. So in all aspects of their lives, parents are socializing children, and smoking is one of those behaviors. It's a learned behavior. Thinking about the pandemic, I think there is some evidence of increase over the pandemic, but I think this research is actually much more important in thinking about the impact that parents have on their children's later behavior. But we know that there's a kind of dose effect. So the more adults you have in your life who are modeling this behavior increases the chances of you taking up smoking yourself. It's not a direct relationship, that's for sure, but it's 4 times more likely is actually, fairly significant. The other thing is we know that 80% of adult smokers took up smoking themselves before the age of 20. So actually, most people who are smokers now are likely to have started smoking when they are children. And it's a habit. Our brain actually loves habits and behavior. It's a very efficient way for our brain to work. And habits are really hard to break. So if children have started smoking, then and are more likely to go on to become smokers themselves in adulthood, they have this really big mountain to climb to try to give up as an adult, which we know is a really hard thing to do, but really worthwhile.
And that is all from me for now. In fact, that is all from me for this year. So thank you very much indeed for watching, and I hope that you all have a wonderful new year. I'll be back on Sunday. In a few minutes, we have a special edition of On the Money with Liam Halligan, looking back on 2021 and looking ahead to 2022. But now, let's bring you right up to date with the weather.
It's time to remind ourselves, there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.